Look at what you're wearing right now. Somewhere on it, there's a tag, a little label, a brand, a size, a country. You never think about it. It's just there, stitched into the seam. Quiet proof of where your clothes came from and who made them. Now imagine every one of those tags was gone, cut out by hand, removed so carefully that nothing could ever be traced back to you. That's how they found him. A man on a beach. No wallet, no papers. Nothing on him that pointed to a life lived anywhere. And when the police asked the simplest question there is, who is this man? They couldn't even learn his name. This is the Somerton Man, and for more than 70 years, the hardest question wasn't how he died, it was who he was. It's the morning of the 1st of December 1948. Somerton Beach, just south of Adelaide. Two men are out early with their horses when they notice someone slumped against the seawall. A man, well dressed, lying still. People had walked past him the evening before. They thought he was drunk or asleep, and they left him there. He wasn't asleep. He was dead. And from the very first moment, something didn't add up. He wore a clean suit and a polished pair of shoes, far too warm and formal for a summer morning on the sand. He looked like a man on his way somewhere important, but he carried nothing that could say who he was. When police searched his pockets, the puzzle only grew. An unused train ticket, a used bus ticket, a comb, chewing gum, a packet of matches, ordinary things. Then they looked at his clothing more closely, and the ordinary turned cold. Every manufacturer's label had been cut out. Just let that sink in. Not one missed, not one overlooked. Every single label gone. Someone had gone through his jacket, his trousers, his shirt, and stripped away anything that could name a shop, a tailor, a town. Why would a man erase himself like that? His fingerprints were taken and sent around the country, then further, to police forces across the English-speaking world, and all the way to the FBI in the United States. A man's fingerprints should catch on something, a record, a file, a single old arrest from years ago. His caught nothing, anywhere. The answer came back the same from every corner of the world. No match. It was as if he'd never existed at all. The case was examined by John Cleland, an emeritus professor of pathology at the University of Adelaide, and one of the sharpest medical minds in the country. Cleland studied the body with enormous care. The man's organs pointed to poison, a swollen spleen, a congested liver, the kind of damage a rare toxin might leave behind. But here's the strange part. No poison was ever found in his body. None. Whatever killed him left no trace a 1948 laboratory could catch. And one detail lingered. The man's calf muscles were unusually high and developed, like a dancer's, or someone who'd spent years in pointed shoes. Yet no dancer, no performer, no missing person ever matched him. And somehow, that still wasn't the strangest thing they'd find. Weeks later, staff at the Adelaide railway station found a brown suitcase, checked in the day before he died, never collected. Inside was a small, strange life. A red dressing gown, a pair of slippers, a stenciling brush, scissors, a knife, and clothing, with, once again, most of the labels cut away. Only a few things had survived the scissors. On 3 of them, a single name. T. Keane. And then the police found the detail that tied it all together. A card of orange waxed thread. A rare kind, not sold anywhere in Australia. The very same thread that had been used to mend a torn pocket in the trousers on the body. The suitcase and the dead man was stitched together. Literally. And still, no name. Who packs a case, cuts out his own labels, and dies on a beach with no identity at all? And then came the piece that turned this case into a legend. Months after the body was found, a tiny scrap of rolled up paper was discovered in a hidden fob pocket, sewn deep into the man's trousers. On it, 2 printed words: Tamam Shud. It's Persian. It means, roughly, it is ended, finished. The words came from a famous book of poetry, the Rubaiyat, by the 11th century Persian poet Omar Khayyam. Verses about living fully because life is short and the end comes for everyone. The exact copy the scrap was torn from was tracked down. Someone had tossed it into the back of a car parked near the beach. And that book held 2 more secrets. On the back cover, faint pencil markings, lines of letters that looked like a code. To this day, no one has cracked what they mean. Beside them, a phone number. It belonged to a young nurse who lived in Glenelg, only a short walk from where the body was found. When she was shown a cast of the dead man's face, witnesses said she looked as though she might faint, but she told police she didn't know him. And whatever she knew, she took to her grave. This is where the story caught fire. Think about the year, 1948. The Cold War had just been given its name. A dead man with no identity, a hidden code, a poison no laboratory could find. Of course, people reached for the obvious answer. A spy. Silenced to keep him quiet. For over 70 years, that's the story most people believed, and it grew into an obsession. Amateur sleuths, researchers, whole documentaries, all chasing a ghost with no name. But the truth, when it finally came, was stranger than any spy story, because it was so much sadder. For decades, the case just sat there, cold, filed away as unsolvable. And then, the part almost nobody saw coming. The answer didn't come from a code breaker, or a detective, or a spy hunter. It came from an engineer. His name is Derek Abbott, a professor at the University of Adelaide, the very same university where John Cleland had studied the body decades before. Abbott became obsessed with the case. For more than 20 years he chipped away at it. He knew ordinary detective work had already failed. If this man was ever going to be named, it would take science that simply didn't exist in 1948. The effort would eventually go as far as exhuming the body itself, but what finally cracked it was something far smaller and far stranger than a grave. And there was one extraordinary thread left to pull. Back in 1949, a plaster cast of the man's head and shoulders had been made, a death mask to preserve his face, and it had been kept for decades. Trapped inside that plaster were a few strands of the man's hair. Abbott joined forces with an American forensic genealogist, Colleen Fitzpatrick, who specializes in giving names back to the unknown dead. Together, they pulled DNA from those old hairs. It took years. Ancient hair is one of the hardest things in the world to read. Then they uploaded the profile to a genealogy database called GEDmatch, searching for anyone who shared a fragment of this man's blood. They found a distant cousin, just one, far out on the branches. From that single thread, Abbott and Fitzpatrick built a family tree. Not a small one, a tree of more than 4,000 names, traced through birth records, marriage certificates, and faded newspaper notices. And slowly, out of all those thousands, one name rose to the surface. Every relative had a record of when they were born and when they died. Every branch of that tree ended in a headstone. Every branch except one. One man simply vanished from history. No death recorded, no grave, nothing after a certain year. His name was Carl Webb. Not Agent X, not a ghost, not a legend. Carl, Charles, Webb. A man who had a mother, a birthday, a hometown. Born in 1905 in Footscray on the western edge of Melbourne. An electrical engineer and instrument maker. Not a spy, not an assassin, not a secret agent from a distant country. Just a man. And the deeper the researchers looked, the sadder the shape of his life became. In the years before he disappeared, Webb had lost people, close family, gone one after another in a short and brutal stretch of time. His marriage had fallen apart. The man who walked toward that beach wasn't carrying a nation's secrets. He was someone whose whole world had quietly collapsed in on itself. The records told a quiet, painful story. Webb had married. The marriage fell apart. The last clear trace of him in any document was in 1947 when he left his wife, who then moved to a town not far from Adelaide. And that name on the tie? T. Keane? Investigators believe it points to a relative by marriage, a brother-in-law named Thomas Keane. So picture it now, with the thriller stripped away. Not a Cold War assassination. A heartbroken man travelling toward the city where his wife had gone, ending up alone on a beach at the far edge of the country, the labels cut from his clothes, a scrap of poetry in his pocket that read simply, "It is ended." And yet, the mystery still isn't fully closed. Even now, the coroner's official finding on his identity is being worked through. Science moves faster than paperwork. The code in the back of the book? Still unsolved. Why did he cut out every label? No one knows. What actually killed him? After more than 70 years, bones can't answer that. The cause of his death may be lost forever. And the biggest question of all still hangs in the air. If a man could have a name, a home, a marriage, a whole life, and then die a few streets from a stranger's front door with no one to claim him, how many others slip through the same gap? How many nameless graves are just someone still waiting to be remembered? The Somerton Man was buried under a headstone that called him exactly what he was: the unknown man. For 74 years, that was his only name. He had disappeared twice, once from his own life and once from the record itself. And then one strand of hair, one stubborn scientist, and 4,000 strangers on a family tree pulled him back. Carl Webb, a man Australia forgot until it didn't. There are more stories out there just like his, names this country lost and never went looking for. This is where they get remembered. Subscribe and don't let the next one stay forgotten.